Let's build some cabinets out of PVC foam board. Hi, this is Joe with Motor City Boat Werks. This episode, I'm going to be talking about how I built cabinets for my boat out of PVC foam board. Before I get to construction methods, let's talk a little bit about composite materials. This way, everyone understands what I'm talking about. Because my boat was essentially a bare hull, well, there were a variety of spaces where I thought I'd like to have some custom-made cabinets or boxes, things that would help me organize my life when I later on use the boat for long-term cruising. I'm not a carpenter or a cabinet maker, and some of the woodworking skills, well, they're really beyond my skill level or attention to detail. I wanted to build these cabinets out of a material that required very little upkeep, that could get wet. I never had to worry about them rotting, and I certainly didn't have to worry about any sort of maintenance. I started looking around to see if there was some type of product that might fit the bill. For cabinets, I needed something that was low maintenance. It had to be easy to work with. I needed to be able to cut it with my normal woodworking tools. It had to be somewhat forgiving because I'm not very precise, and sometimes my projects don't come out looking that good when they come off the table saw. It's also got to be water resistant, bug resistant. It also had to be economical, of course, right? It can't be that expensive. And I also needed to be lightweight. I don't want to be adding a lot of extra weight back into the boat. Was there a material out there that would allow me to put together some cabinets really simply, but meet all my criteria?
I don't know.
Well, I've talked about a variety of products in some of my other episodes, composite materials that I've done some form of boat building or construction out of. We talked about Coroplast. It's basically corrugated plastic cardboard. But it's really too lightweight, and it's not designed to be used for any sort of cabinet type structure. This is great for pattern making or maybe as a surface to put your epoxy on when you're doing fiberglass work. We talked about Coosa Board. It's a great product. It's fantastic for structural components on a boat, and it's the go-to marine plywood replacement. There's a couple downsides for using Coosa Board for building cabinets. One of them is that the material itself can be a little bit expensive. I prefer to save that money for structural components that are going to be on the outside of the boat where I really need to make sure they're going to hold up long term. Another issue is that Coosa Board, I don't know if you can see it, but it does have somewhat of a rough texture, and it can be difficult to get this texture when you're done in the finishing stage down to a really nice smooth surface. It kind of takes a lot of work. Another product, G10 fiberglass or some type of fiberglass substrate. Now this is super stiff. It's really great stuff. It's tremendously thick, but to be honest with you, it's really heavy, and it's also crazy expensive. This has a very special purpose on a boat, and it's not for building cabinets or shelves. Another product I often get asked about is, what about King Starboard? King Starboard is a brand name of marine HDPE, high density polyethylene. It's a plastic. It's an amazing product. Super stiff, very, very dense. It's impervious to weather and all sorts of things. The problem with HDPE is that it's heavy, and to get any sort of thickness, it's expensive. Also, HDPE has a very, very smooth surface, and because of its chemical composition, it can be extremely difficult to glue. Epoxy and normal glues will not stick to it. PVC foam board goes by a lot of different trade names. Celtec, Komatex, Sintra, all these are brand names for a product called PVC foam board. Sometimes it's called extruded foam PVC. PVC is polyvinyl chloride. It's basically a type of plastic. It's the same product that water pipes and a variety of other things are made out of. But in this case, the PVC is slightly different, and it's been aerated to create tiny little micro bubble pores, which create a very lightweight yet stiff plastic product. PVC foam board looks like this. It's hard and rigid. It comes in a variety of different thicknesses. I usually use 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch thickness. This material is often used for storefronts, for business signage outside. It's weather resistant, it's waterproof, it doesn't rot. Depending on the product, it may have to be coated to protect it from UV. This PVC foam board is also fire retardant. While it may catch on fire, it will eventually put itself out due to its chemical composition. This is not the PVC foam board that you're thinking of, where your kids use it for arts and crafts projects. At your local craft store, this is called art board, or maybe foam poster board. And sometimes you'll see it's actually cardboard on one layer, foam in the middle, and another piece of cardboard. This is not what you want. PVC extruded foam board is actually a hard plastic product. It's often not available in big box stores. You may have a difficult time finding it. And although you might be able to find PVC trim molding and board width or board length pieces of extruded PVC at your local DIY store, this material is not exactly the same thing as Komatex, Celtec, or Sintra. For my purposes going forward, I'm going to refer to my PVC foam board as Celtec. Celtec comes in a variety of different densities and different weights. So you kind of got to know what you're looking for when you go to your plastics distributor to purchase your sheets. Now you will find some information on the internet where people are using this material to do household cabinet making projects. This material has been used extensively, often for seat backs, for marine cushions, exterior bolster seats, things like that on a boat. In those situations, on a boat, this material is a great replacement for marine plywood. What does it cost? Well, here's the secret. You're probably not going to find them at your local big box store. And while you may be able to get them at some sort of a marine supply type of store, you're going to pay out the nose. So what you want to do is find yourself a local plastics distributor. Someone who supplies composites or plastic materials to local sign makers. Nationwide, there's all sorts of plastic sheet distributors. You just have to find them. And while they may tell you that they don't sell to individual customers, they only sell to businesses, if you keep looking, you will find one that sells you sheets of Coosa Board or PVC Foam Board. Ask me how I know. A sheet of Blue Water 26 Coosa Board bought from a local plastics distributor, well, it runs about $225 to $230. That's 1/2 inch, 4 foot by 8 foot sheet. PVC foam board, 1/2 inch, 4 by 8, should run you under $200, maybe even closer to $100. Because the PVC foam board has a super smooth surface, it takes paint real well, and the edges can be milled real nice for roundovers. This is a fantastic product to use for cabinets on a boat. One of the very first cabinet type projects that I decided to build on my boat was an overhead navigational pod. Basically a cabinet that would be above my head, above the steering helm, where I could put a number of instruments and have them all enclosed in kind of a nice design. This is basically a very simple box. It's constructed of a facing, 2 sides, a top and bottom, and a back plate. Of course, you could build this out of marine plywood or some type of exotic wood that you'd like to have on your boat, but the reality is, over time, all this woodwork becomes really difficult to maintain and upkeep. One of my early boats, the classic Allberg 30, beautiful classic plastic sailboat. Man, I love that boat, and I put all sorts of intricate woodwork and wood pieces and accent pieces all over the boat, all over the interior, all sorts of intricate bobs and bits of exotic wood. But about 6 months to 1 year of living on that boat, well, things started looking a little bit worn, and it became a constant battle of trying to maintain the woodwork to really keep it up to a high standard. The success of this project led me to try something a little more advanced. I decided to build a refrigerator cabinet that would go between the head bulkhead and the V-berth. I always start my cabinet designs with some sort of pattern or mock-up. I'll use either cardboard or Coroplast. It depends on the size. I use whatever I have available. After an initial cardboard pattern, I decided to transition to the pink foam method. Now, I've talked about the pink foam method before in the episode where I discussed mocking up the head for the Albin 27. Pink foam gives a great impression of what the actual object's gonna look like once you get done building it out of Celtec. From the pink foam method, I cut 3 pieces of Celtec, and then you assemble everything together using the screw and glue method. Now we've talked about this before. This is where I use drywall screws and basically just mock up, screw everything together the way I think it would look. At this stage, I don't use any epoxy, any type of adhesive. It's just the screws kind of holding everything together. It gives me an idea of the rough overall shape. I might lightly sand down to make sure that all the 90-degree angles are very flush. The screws do a couple things. They hold everything together so I can get an idea of what the actual item's gonna look like. But also the screw holes serve to kind of align everything so that when I take it back apart and I begin applying epoxy paste to the joints, well, I can realign everything and screw it all back together. This time with epoxy holding everything together. Now the epoxy in the joints will set up on its own, but often that's really not enough to hold something together. You need to lay in some epoxy fillet. All of my projects and in my fiberglass work, I use West System epoxy. Now that's not to say that other fiberglass brands or resins are any less or any better. This is just the product that I've gotten comfortable with over a number of years. Now I want to remind you, I don't get any compensation for recommending any of the products that I used on my boat. I have no sponsors. I get no compensation. When I first got started in boat restoration and boat building, I didn't have access to a lot of different choices, and West System was the go-to. I got it from West Marine. But over the years, I came to rely on this product. I like how it gives me consistent results. The documentation and some of the how-to has been really excellent over the years. You may have your own fiberglass resin that you like to use. The important thing is that it needs to be epoxy resin. Now, the most important thing when doing the screw and glue method on a piece of Celtec is remember, PVC foam board has an extremely smooth surface. You gotta rough it up a little bit. Give it some teeth. I like to use 150 to 200 sandpaper to kind of create a surface that the epoxy can really grab onto. And frankly, over the entire surface if you're gonna ultimately end up painting this thing. Once the epoxy sets up, the screws can be removed. You then fill the screw holes with epoxy paste, you sand everything down, use a round over bit to turn over the edges to make everything look like it's supposed to be there, and then you simply prime and paint. It's affixed to the hull using a series of Coosa Board cheater blocks. The refrigerator cabinet will be attached to the hull using some nice stainless steel screws and finish washers. Any gaps between the cabinet and the hull, well, that'll all be filled with marine sealant. You'll never notice. Now, I could have built the cabinet directly into the hull. I could have fiberglass and epoxied the whole thing in place, but I didn't want to do that because one of my underlying design concepts for my boat was that I wanted to be able to access wiring, systems, plumbing, things in the boat that might go wrong over time. When you have built-in cabinets that can't be removed, they're permanent parts of the boat structure, it becomes very difficult to squeeze yourself into tiny little spaces to access things that might have gone wrong. I wanted to design furniture for my boat that could be unscrewed and simply moved out of the way, just like you would on an airplane or perhaps a custom car. In the end, the cabinet looks like it was made out of fiberglass, but in reality, it's all Celtec. The drawer was also made out of Celtec. The roller system, well, that came from Amazon. It's a basic drawer pull. And the drawer facing, well, that was a piece of teak from an old project, some drawer that just came apart. The success of building the nav pod and the refrigerator stand, well, it has given me a tremendous amount of confidence. And because of this, I've gone ahead and designed another piece of furniture, what I call the aft cabin cowling. It's kind of like a cabinet in the aft cabin of the boat that separates the fuel tank area from the aft cabin. I will be explaining this and I will walk you through all the steps, real time, as I build this cabinet. Unfortunately, that project hasn't gotten to a moment of completion. All of the video footage, well, it's in the works. Seriously, it's coming soon. I want to take a moment to thank all the new viewers for the channel in the past week, boy, things have really kind of taken off. And I want to thank you for your support. In particular, I want to thank Andy Miller at Boat Werks today. He said some really nice things about the channel, and I really appreciate it. He's a class act. If you're new to the channel and you're just kind of figuring out what we've got going on here, take a moment to watch all of the videos that I already have put up on the site. There's about 15 or 16 of them, and watch them in order, because I do put some effort into trying to make sure that they flow logically and that projects are done in a logical fashion. There are principles that I talk about early on in some of the episodes that carry over, and in fact were things that we talked about today. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. I get a kick out of all your comments, and I really enjoy making the videos. It really kind of helps me keep pushing along the boat project. I'm making quite a bit of progress. I just don't have the footage quite ready to go yet for new episodes. But they're coming. I'll see you next week. Thanks so much. Stay motivated. This week's question comes from Mr. Austin Post from Syracuse, New York. And Mr. Post writes, "Hey, your channel has really started to blow up. Do you have any sort of celebration or anything planned? If so, what can you tell us?" Mr. Post, all I can say is stay tuned. There will be an important announcement coming from Motor City Boat Werks soon.
If you like these videos, please hit the subscribe button. These videos would not be possible without your support.